Good afternoon, everybody. The time is now 2 o'clock, and I'll call the June 18th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting to order. I'll start by acknowledging that the City of Fort Saskatchewan is located on Treaty 6 territory and Métis Nation of Alberta District 11, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Nihilwak, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit, whose footsteps have marked these lands for generations. It is because of our treaty relationship that we can live, work, and play on Treaty 6 territory. Next, I am looking for approval of the minutes for the May 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting. Oh, sorry. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, I'll move that council approve the minutes of the May 21st, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting.
Thank you. Is there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. I'll close the motion. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Next, we have delegations. We don't have anyone registered to speak. Is there anyone here today who would like to come to the mic? Not seeing any. We will move on to presentations. Our first presentation today is the Fort Saskatchewan Pride Committee. And we are welcoming Lauren Reed, who is the chair of the Fort Saskatchewan Pride Committee, and Carol Grimm of Fort Saskatchewan United Church. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having us. Along with National Indigenous History Month and Men's Mental Health Month, June is also known as Pride Month. The Pride Committee wanted to take an opportunity to connect with our Mayor and Council regarding Fort Saskatchewan Pride Week and allyship in our community. Fort Saskatchewan Pride Week started 6 years ago when a small group of like-minded people got together and talked about things in our community that we saw our two SLGBTQIA+ people facing. There were things like bullying, harassment, youth suicide rates, access to services, discrimination, and a lack of sense of belonging in our community. With our community organization partners like the City of Fort Saskatchewan, FCSS, the Library, Families First, BGC, and the United Church, we started the first annual Pride Week. Over the years, we've also included other organizations, many local businesses, and corporate sponsors such as Dow, PME, Ellis Don, and more. From our purpose statement, the Fort Saskatchewan Pride Committee's mission is to foster an inclusive community that celebrates diversity while building safety and awareness of the 2S LGBTQIA+ identities. We have done that over the years by hosting events such as educational workshops, guest speakers, drag bingos, family play mobs, reading with royalty, church services, resource fairs, markets, paint nights, and much more. Our committee has worked hard to bring Fort Saskatchewan diverse events, entertainment, and education to enrich the lives of the residents and create a safe space for our gay and trans community members. Things that we have noticed over the years is the growing number of allies and supporters attending our events. It has been from these folks that we have heard things such as, "Thank you for showing people that Fort Sask is not an unsafe place for gay teens. I wish this was happening when my daughter came out 8 years ago. Finally, a local opportunity to support my friend who's trans." The allies in Fort Saskatchewan are incredible. During COVID, we still were able to have a Pride Week, and one of the highlights for me was our Show Your Pride event, where residents were encouraged to decorate their doors and windows and businesses to show support. It was a really beautiful thing, and we had many people driving around looking at all the support that Fort Saskatchewan residents were showing. I have been asked how to be a good ally. Usually I respond with, go ask Carol. But it really comes down to getting the basics down. Educate yourself, respect people's identities, and show up in any way you can. Another tip I have is to be patient and steadfast in your commitment and take action. I learned those things from my once unlikely friend, Carol. Carol has been on the committee for years and is the chair of the Affirming Committee at the United Church. Carol invited me to their inclusive church service over and over through the years, and for years I evaded her. She offered us to use the church for events or meetings, and I always found somewhere else. For me and many other queer people, the distrust in the church community runs deep. But year after year, Carol kept showing up, helping, supporting, and welcoming people. Eventually, I made it to that church service, and I learned how to be an exceptional ally. I'd like to turn it over to Carol for a few minutes, and she is going to talk about the United Church's journey in allyship.
Good afternoon. She didn't need to say all of that. What is an affirming church? 40 years ago, United Church of Canada decided that they'd better acknowledge that they had discriminated against to us LGBTQ community. And over the past 40 years, tremendous progress has been made. We have gay, lesbian, and transgender ministers in our church, and all are welcome. One of the things that they started in the mid-90s was what they call Affirm United, and it was a social justice organization focused on the rights and helping the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And they invited United Church, individual United Churches community to go ahead and learn more and say publicly that they are an affirming church. That was a process of education for us. The first thing we had to acknowledge is that everybody has different experiences, different backgrounds, and we had to have some common ground and a starting point, and we asked our church congregation to anonymously put questions in a question box, because it's a very difficult topic for many. And there's many fears and hopes, and so we had a question box, and we invited a person from Altview, which is an organization in Strathcona County, who came and responded to all of those questions, all of those fears, all of those worries, so we knew where to go. What we found was the most successful way for people to understand was to get in and hear people come in to speak and hear personal stories, and that made a huge difference. What was life like as children and their transitioning to adulthood? And from there, we decided for sure we were going to become an affirming church. We studied literature, we did a variety of learning opportunities, and at the end, 100% of our congregation voted to become an affirming church. Now, an affirming church means that you don't stay within your walls, you step outside of your comfort zone, and you become public, intentional, and explicit in your being supportive of the community, which is why we thought the allyship, we started with the Pride group, and we've done many things. I think that Lauren has probably mentioned, and we started small. We started by flying the flag. That was not too popular with some people, and that was taken down a few times, but we remained resilient, and we put on the roof of the church, because it wasn't, some people asked, why not just fly the Canadian flag? I said, well, this is a symbol of safety and support, and if somebody's in distress, they can come through those doors and be supported, and that's the reason for the flag. From there, we got involved in Pride Week activities. We found out about other organizations. There's something called the CHEW Project. It is a project that is it was developed by what we call the Firefly Firefly organization. It's housed in the University of Alberta in the Faculty of Education. And I said, I didn't even know about it until we started researching, and my office at the university was around the corner from that office. And during COVID, it slowed us down a little bit, but we did reach out to CHU because we knew there were marginalized children and youth and young adults, and asked how can we help. And things were basic, like, could you give us water? Could you donate bus tickets? Could you do home baking, please? And those sorts of things. So I think that we're really happy that the journey that we have taken, and look forward to finding more opportunities that perhaps Lauren can suggest. Thank you.
So our committee wanted to bring Carol along today because we thought that the United Church's journey that they took over years to become an affirming church is really similar to any organization or person's journey to become an ally. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes education, but it is possible no matter where you start from, because I don't think the congregation started necessarily 100% of a vote, but they got there. So we wanted to share that story with Mayor and Council and Chair, because we thought it was a really good representation of the journey of Fort Saskatchewan in our early years. It's 6 years of Pride Week. We just finished our 6th Pride Week. It was a huge success with just a ton of events, and we're very grateful for our community. Carol mentioned her question box, and I know that it'll be open up for question, but we also brought the question box today that we want to leave with Chair and Mayor and Council, because if there's any questions you want to ask of the committee that you might think of later or don't want to do right now, put them in the box anonymously, and we would love to get back to you as a committee, just because we'd like to create that safe space for you as well. So thank you for having us.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Carol, for that presentation today. There is no doubt the positive impact that both the church and your committee makes on this community. So thank you so much. I'll open it up if there are any questions from members of council. Mayor Ketcher?
So not a question, but a comment, because I want to thank you for all you've been doing over the last 6 years. I know the first event that I went to, I'll be honest, I was nervous, because I had people asking me and saying, why would you do that? Why are you supporting people like this? And it was because it's the right thing to do. I've lost friends over it, but you know what? It's about lifting the people up in our community and saying that people are equal. You know, you don't choose who you love, so you shouldn't hate people just for the basis of who they love. So I just want to commend you and thank you for continuing your efforts, and it gets bigger each year, and hopefully people's attitudes will continue to evolve and change, and I think that that's the entire goal. Bullying will never stop, we know that, but I think if there's lots of people who stand up against those bullies, I think it will taper it. But I'm very sad when we lose a member of our community that doesn't feel that they belong. I think that that just goes to show there's more work to be done. So thank you.
Councillor Abatoye?
Thank you so much, ladies, for your presentation. It's so good to hear about all the work that's gone into your committee, and just hearing from United Church firsthand. That's very commendable. And I think that one of our visions of the city is that we want to be a welcoming and inclusive community, and this absolutely helps us achieve that goal or that vision. So thank you. My question is, you talked about educating people, like people educating themselves. So my question to your committee is, like, what kind of educational initiatives do you plan on implementing to promote awareness? Because again, it's like you said, it's a difficult topic for some people because, but how do you plan to create that understanding and awareness, of the, and forgive me if I get it wrong, towards LGBTQIA plus issues within the broader community, so not just the church, but within the community of Fort Saskatchewan as a whole.
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Abatoye, thank you for that question. Every year since the first year during Pride Week, and usually leading up to as well, we hold a variety of typically online seminars, but we've also had in-person and guest speakers come out as well. And those topics have been everything from, parenting a child who is questioning, to trans issues, to how to be a good ally, the safer spaces training. So that is definitely something that we will always continue. And we've also made the commitment to do that year round as well, not just prior to or during Pride Week. And we really also are speaking a lot about educating the community around LGBTQ plus 2I issues, as well as the intersectionality between Indigenous folks and the many other groups in our community. So it's definitely part of our commitment to the community.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. My second question is to Carol. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you. You've been here really. I feel like the word is demystifies a lot of things, especially for the church folks. And so you've gone through a journey as a church, and it didn't just start yesterday, right? Are you? Because again, I'm part of a church, and I know how difficult these conversations could be. So and I know that there is a ministerial group where the pastors in the community meet. Do those conversations get to that point, or is there a plan or some sort of initiatives to get like the other churches to even begin that journey as you guys have done?
Chair to Councillor Abatoy. We unfortunately don't have a minister for our church at this point in time. Reverend Paul Douglas Waffle moved on to a church in Edmonton. So we're not really part of that church council at this point in time. I know when Reverend Paul was here, he did a lot of work, but I'm not sure that it was also successful in reaching out.
Okay. Well, thank you for your response. Again, appreciate you two ladies being here. I know it's a journey, but it keeps getting better. 6 years now. How many do you have in your? Okay, that's my third question. I'm going to hold my question, but just thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Councillor Wizard.
No question. Just wanted to say thanks for the presentation. I know it's not an easy journey, and I just feel I'm thankful that the job you're doing and making everyone feel welcome and inclusive.
Councillor Abatoy.
So let me just ask my question since there's nobody else online. So what your committee? What's that group like? So you've been around for 6 years. How many people are there? Do you have mostly youths? Like, what's that demographic like?
Yeah, definitely. We have it's been fluid over the years for sure. There's been sort of a core group of us that have gotten together. We do have organizational support from FCSS, Families First, and Boys and Girls Club. So they sit on our committee as part of their organizations. But we've had youth. We've had allies that are just community members. We've had queer folks from Fort Saskatchewan. This year we brought on Rob Borowski, who was a former resident and well-known queer advocate in Edmonton, but because he grew up here, he felt he wanted to come back and contribute. So it has really been fluid, and we are very open and always welcoming new members as well.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. Excuse me, and for being here this afternoon. I sit on the library board, and I know our director. She's going into year 3 right now as a big proponent of freedom of information. I'm not sure if that's the right term. Freedom of, I don't know if. Okay, yes, thank you. And for just being able to make library resources available to anyone who's questioning, anyone who wants to know more on any of the topics surrounding the group. So maybe could you highlight a couple of the organizations in Fort Saskatchewan that are linked closely with the community, and just how you're working with them, and what resources they're able to provide you, so on and so forth.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Madam Chair, through to Councillor Noyan. Yeah, the library definitely over the years has been a big supporter of our group and in general. And like you said, it's that idea that, you know, information is knowledge and knowledge is power. And, you know, the more you learn about things and the more you know about them, you know, the better informed you are to make your own choices in life and support those people in your community. And the library has continually had events and projects going on that just allow for that information exchange. So we're very thankful. Again, FCSS is continually involved. Boys and Girls Club has been involved. The Families First Society has been one of our first groups that really came together to do a lot of work around, you know, inclusive community family supports and really wanting to stand out in that way. The Bridge has been involved. The Next Step School has been involved. I honestly, like at some point, it seems like every organization has kind of come and helped us out with things. So it's been a really diverse and truly a community response. When we talk about this committee, it isn't just a couple people. It is there's a lot of people at that table with ideas and questions, and that move all of our work along.
Yeah, excellent, and thank you for that overview. And so obviously you've got your feet under you right now and have some serious community allies, and it's great to see the progress being made. Thanks.
Thank you. That looks like it for questions and comments. So thank you for being here today. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll leave the box.
Sounds good. And next we'll move on to the Point O'Pins area structure plan update. I do believe that we have Mike Yoakum and Chuck McNutt here today, and Brittany Suchuk on WebEx.
Yep.
Hopefully I said all of your names correctly. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect.
Welcome, gentlemen, and we have about 15 minutes for your presentation, and then we can take questions and comments.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of council. My name is Chuck McNutt, Senior Planner with WSP. And,
Mike Yoakum from Landrex.
And yeah, as you mentioned, we have Brittany Shuchak on the line here, and she's going to be giving you the presentation, and I'll just kind of help her along. So, Brittany, are you there?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready.
There you go.
Okay, super. Oh, I can't see the presentation now. All right. Okay, good afternoon, Mayor Katcher, Council and Admin. I'm Brittany Shuchuk, a Senior Planner with WSP. And as they introduced themselves already, my colleagues are here in person with you, Chuck and Mike. So we are here to briefly present an update of the Point O'Pins area structure plan, which has been in progress since early 2023. And since the beginning of this project, we have been working collaboratively with the city and feel that the plan has come together really nicely over the last couple of months. So please note that the presentation you have in your agenda package today is slightly different than what appears on the screen. We just added a couple of slides for clarity, but there's no conflicting information. So for presentation contents, we will provide an overview of the project, our engagement process, how the concept plan has changed over the project's duration, and next steps. Next slide, Chuck. So the Point O'Pins ASP area is approximately 148 hectares in size and is located on the south side of the city, situated between Highway 21 and the North Saskatchewan River. And the lands are designated as future urban area within the MDP. Council initially approved the development of this ASP in February of 2023 based on the following reasons. So that the West Park neighborhood is coming close to completion. The 2015 growth study, through a medium case scenario, forecasted that the city would run out of land for residential development by 2027, and that was prior to the annexation. And then digging further into growth and absorption statistics, as of early 2023, there remained less than 4 years of available land in the West Park neighborhood. It was 93% complete at that time, and only 10 years of land available in the city as a whole in areas that had completed plans in place. The 2015 growth study indicated that best practices for an urban municipality should be to maintain a minimum 20-year supply of available lands for development. So due to the complexity of land development and the planning and engineering studies, which can take multiple years to complete, in addition to significant financial investment, it was concluded that to ensure there is adequate land prepared for future development, planning needed to commence immediately. Next slide. So for the vision and guiding principles, we'll just run through this quickly. The vision of the plan is to accommodate future growth of the city, provide a diverse array of housing options, incorporate mixed use and commercial lands, and enhance access to the outdoors. Guiding principles, of course, align with the vision to develop a complete community, housing diversity and density, efficient use of land, connectivity, and protection of natural integrity of the area. Next slide. So the project, as I had noted, received council authorization in February of 2023. An initial open house was held in April of 2023, and this was very preliminary, provided preliminary info about the plan and the project's intent, but no land use concept at that time. Our initial ASP submission made to administration occurred in June 2023, and then we had received comments back from admin and made adjustments to the plan. From those comments, our second open house and second submission of the ASP occurred in December of 2023. That's where we presented our first land use concept. Again, we received comments back from the city after Christmas, and our third submission was made in April, and a third open house was held at the end of May. And so this third submission and the third open house reflected our revised land use concept. So we're awaiting complete comments from the city for this April 3rd submission. And then we hope to wrap it up and get it formally approved by the end of the year. We'll talk about timing constraints in the next couple slides. Or at the end of the presentation, I should say. Next slide. Okay, so this is our site features and constraints map. We'll briefly run through this. This was generated at the very beginning of our project to help us understand the site and the constraints surrounding the site. So as you can see, a couple of them on here there's an existing tree stand in the northeast corner. There's a seasonal marsh right in the middle of the plan area. We have existing residential along Point of Pins Drive through the center of the plan area. And then we have natural area and benchlands and the riverbank, which of course are a lower elevation than the bulk of the plan area west of Point of Pins Drive. So again, this was considered through all our land use concept iterations. Next slide. For community engagement, we've had 4 community engagement events so far through the project process. Again, the initial open house that was held in April of 2023. Concerns expressed at this open house were basically impacts to the existing Point of Pins Drive lots from future development. We had a second open house in December. Concerns here again were expressed regarding the impacts of Point of Pins Drive and some density concerns about what we're presenting in our first land use concept. We had an online engagement forum set up through the month of January 2024. It presented the same things that the December open house presented and just allowed people to review the plan online and submit feedback. And then we had just had our third open house a few weeks ago on May 30th, where we presented our revised land use concept. And that open house was really positive. There weren't any additional concerns expressed, and I think it went really well for all the people that came. Next slide. So next couple of slides are our concept design. So in 2 slides, we compare them side by side, which is a bit easier to look at. But this was our initial concept that we presented during the second open house and online. Chuck, do you want to switch? Next slide. This is the revised concept, which we had submitted within our April submission to the city and our May open house. And if you jump to the next slide, this compares our initial concept to a revised concept. So most of the significant adjustments were made based on administrative feedback, except for one, which is the extension of the Point of Pins Drive buffer. So from the initial concept to the revised, at the very south end of Point of Pins Drive, you can see we extended the green buffer all the way to the south end of the plan area. This was based on resident feedback. particularly the 4 lots to the very south of Point of Pins didn't feel like they were being protected from this buffer, so we extended it for them. Now, all the other changes were city driven. I'll run through those really quickly. So we have, on our revised concept, we have a tree stand that's being retained in the northeast corner of the plan area. And because we've retained this tree stand, additional adjustments were made to green spaces throughout the plan area. So from the initial to the revised concept, the number of proposed parks have been adjusted. The parks have gotten smaller but increased. So we have more pocket parks throughout the area, which again increases accessibility for residents to open space within the neighborhood. With the the maintenance of the tree stand, we have other land use changes along the east side of the plan area. So south of the tree stand, in our revised concept, we have a brown hatched area of land, and this is medium to high density residential development, and it is a combination of medium and high density residential development, a combination of townhomes, stacked townhomes, low-rise apartments, and seniors' homes. We've also consolidated the pink commercial mixed use area, again, along that eastern boundary of the plan area. So this pink area is a combination of residential mixed use development along with commercial pad sites. The split is about 40% residential and 60% commercial. And then our last significant change was the adjustment to the neighborhood nodes. On the initial concept, we have 3 neighborhood nodes proposed. They are illustrated by red and turquoise asterisks. And then in the revised concept, we have 1 neighborhood node, which is the blue asterisk right in the center of the plan area. The intent of this node is to be a walkable neighborhood center and a local destination for residential areas, and it contains medium density residential mixed use and open space area. And we determined that the node should be reduced to put more emphasis on the neighborhood node, and we believe 1 neighborhood node serves the ASP area effectively. Next slide. So density, I've only included a snapshot of the densities to indicate that we are meeting the minimum density target that is set by the EMRB and the MDP, the MDP, which is 35 units per net residential hectare. Next slide. Transportation plan. Our transportation highlights include 2 roundabouts, which are located along the southern east-west collector. They are illustrated by 2 blue circles. We have 3 alternative accesses into the site, 2 along the northern boundary along Wilshire Boulevard and 1 along Highway 21. Those are illustrated by the lime green circles. And we have 1 right in, right out along Highway 21, which is the purple circle just adjacent to the tree stand. As well, the burgundy dotted lines that are kind of scattered throughout the plan area indicate shared use pathways. Next slide. Open space, again, fairly similar to the transportation plan, but I just wanted to confirm that the location of the parks on this plan all ensure that all residential developments within the plan area can access a park within a 400-meter walk shed or a 5-minute walk. So again, that was a significant priority, access to green space. Next slide. Phasing plan. So based on existing servicing and continuity from the West Park neighborhood, this was our phasing plan. Stage 1 to stage 3 is estimated at a 15 to 20 year completion, but of course is dependent on market conditions. And then stage 4 is the special study area. Now, the special study area I didn't touch on, which I will now. So those are the lands in purple along the west side of the plan area. And this land use designation includes all lands below top of bank as well as below the bench lands. Because this area is at a lower elevation than the rest of the plan area, it has unique constraints and requires more detail and technical analysis to determine developability. So additional environmental, geotechnical, biophysical studies, those have not been done yet. So for stage 4, we're not saying that this area is developable or not developable. It's to be determined at a future stage. Next slide. So for immediate next steps, we need to receive complete comments from admin on our 3rd submission, and then we hope to make final final revisions to the plan and submit for final approval, and then work our way through that formal adoption process. Next slide. So here on this next step option slide, we've played around with potential approval timelines for the ASP. So we have option 1, which gives us first reading before summer break, and option 2, which is first reading after summer break. And then on the right side of the screen, we have all the future steps that need to be completed in order to get shovels into the ground. So this is all following formal adoption of the ASP. And at very minimum, these steps will take 14 months to complete. Next slide. So keeping those options, particularly options 1 and 2 in mind from the previous slide, option 1 will likely allow for a 2026 construction start, keeping in mind all those additional steps that need to occur after formal adoption. For option 2, which brings us to first reading after the summer break, a 2026 construction start becomes less likely, but may still be possible. And then option 3, if approval is pushed to 2025, construction will be then pushed to 2027. And based on the availability of lots within the city and current and future demand, a 2026 construction start needs to occur in order to remain proactive rather than reactive in terms of lot development and availability. It's very important to make new lots available in Fort Saskatchewan in a timely manner in order to keep potential residents from looking elsewhere and to keep up with demand. So with that being said, option 1, of course, is ideal, and saving that 3 months at the front end of this approval process could mean saving a full year at the end of the process, making a difference in construction start from 2026 to 2027. So that's where we're at today. Again, we want to get this thing to approval, and we're looking forward to working with admin to get that done. Next slide. And that's it. So we have questions, if you have questions.
Thank you very much. I will start with Councillor Harris.
Brittany, we had a chance to chat at your last open house. Thank you. It was nice to meet you there. And thanks for your presentation. Looking at this, there are a couple of questions that I have. First of all, what sort of buffering do you anticipate between the development area in stage 3, if you will, onto Point of Pins? Will that just be a fence along the east side of the roadway, or will you see some berming and tree planting and things of that nature to create a natural buffer between the existing country residential area and the much more highly dense area to the east? That's my first question.
It is a, oh, sorry.
No, that's the first question.
It is a natural, oh, okay. Do you want me to answer it now?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. It is a natural buffer. It will be 10 meters wide. I believe there will be tree planting on it. And I don't know, Chuck, Mike, can you confirm if a fence will be along?
Am I on? Yes, Madam Chairman, Councillor Harris, yes, it is expected to have a screen fence with a natural buffer, or just a grass buffer with some plantings, but likely no berm, or a very small berm, if any.
Okay. My second question is, and it concerns the existing tree stand, and I think we all love trees, but is that tree stand, notwithstanding, if we were to remove that and put it somewhere else through planting and naturalization of some of the other development area, would there be a higher and better use that the developer would see if that was a commercial area similar to what is just to the north that already exists? Would that be a better and higher use of the land as opposed to just a tree stand sitting there, which is basically alienated from everything around it?
I can answer it partly, and maybe Mike can chime in, but we originally had it as a commercial and mixed-use site because of its visibility along the highway. So, you know, when we first came forward, it made obvious sense to kind of migrate it into the existing commercial and build that corridor along the highway as a high visibility, high traffic, high value piece. So that was our initial intentions, but you know, there was some value in trying to retain the trees. So, you know, we had to balance the two.
I asked those two questions primarily because I don't see the value of the tree stand in that location. And I asked in terms of buffering down towards Point of Pins to create, I guess, a better separation between the country residential that's been there for 40 years plus.
Yeah, in terms of
And
the
that being a
buffering,
commercial area as opposed to a tree stand, which is an MR.
sure. In terms of the buffering, well, the way we approached the buffering was the owner between, we'll call it the Landrex piece, which is the quarter section along the highway, the eastern piece, and Point of Pins, that triangular area, is a separate owner. And what we did was we tried to balance the reserves on one side versus the other because we could do that. We looked at the school site requirements, the municipal reserve, the parks in and around where we like to go, and also parks on the western piece. And we're able to balance their dedication requirements with the Landrex dedication requirements and make the site usable. If we were to take the entirety of the tree stand and put it onto the adjacent piece, what would likely happen then is Landrex would end up having to pay cash in lieu for that amount, and the city or whatever would have to purchase that property from that cash in lieu piece and then over dedicate on that parcel. That's kind of the balancing act that would happen.
So it could be done from the standpoint of higher and best use for the tree stand area as commercial as you originally anticipated, correct?
Yeah, physically it can be done. We originally had that tree stand, that MR parcel and dedication still existing within the Landrex parcel. We still had their dedication requirements completely within their quarter section, just wasn't on the adjacent parcel.
Okay, well, I'll come back to that. So.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Councillor Blizzard.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. Couple of questions, and one just a little one. Is the land south of that still Strathcona County? That's not Fort Saskatchewan?
No, it's Fort Saskatchewan.
Oh, it is too. Okay, it's future. I wasn't sure on that because I see you have kind of arrows going for, I assume, future use then. Okay, that's fine.
Both quarters got annexed. Both quarters got annexed. We're just dealing
I
with
wasn't sure because I didn't look at the map. What's the potential population if this is fully built out, excluding stage 4? And I guess assuming there's a couple of people, 2 or 3 in the house, right?
Yeah, let me just find the stats. So, we are here. Total population. I think it was 1,500 people, but I'm just going to find that for sure. Brittany, do you have those stats handy?
I'm just going through them right now.
What kinds of stats here?
Yeah, 1,500 units and about 3,800 people.
3,800. Okay, I have a couple more questions, but I'll come back to them.
Sure. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, a question regarding the multi-use shared. I believe it's proposed to be a walkway along the fence adjacent to Point of Pins roadway. What was there any indication, or do you have any indication on which side of the fence a shared use trail would be?
Yeah, Councillor Macon or Chairman through to Councillor Nguyen. Yes, we would have the fence backing onto the lots, then the buffer. The 10-meter buffer, and the trail would be within that 10-meter buffer. So, okay. And then the roadway.
Okay. Excellent. So on the east side of the fence is what, yeah.
East side of Point of Pins Road, west side of the fence.
Okay, great. And just in regards to the special, is it special use lands, bench lands, I believe, at the bottom of the bank? Assuming, I think I was 4 years old when this area around Point of Pins Creek flooded. I was down there looking at the high water line of the North Saskatchewan River. It's getting very close to the floodplain, and actual geographical designated area. Assuming Geotech comes back and says this is developable in some capacity, would you give us kind of an idea of what kind of development we would see down there?
Yeah,
they're too far away, and I appreciate
too far away. Yeah. There was lots of issues that had to be dealt with on any property, and this one in particular. This one is a little bit lower, and so the servicing is a little bit unique. That said, it is part of the logical planning unit that stems from the highway to the river. So logically it belongs in the plan area, but there's a lot of work to do to understand how it's going to get developed. So we kept it in the plan, left it as a special study area. That landowners, we don't know what their aspirations are, what the city is, how it's going to service, all those kinds of things. So with the amount of work that has to go on to that, including, the possible flooding areas, environmental issues, all that kind of stuff, there's a fair bit that still needs to be studied for it. So it belongs in the plan. when it wants to be developed, there'll have to be those studies come forward and probably amend the plan to identify what the future land uses would want to be. So we don't know yet.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And that was kind of the answer I was expecting. So this type of development in special use areas would occur at the very tail end, if it even does happen, if anything's feasible in that area. Okay, thank you.
Okay, on round one, still Mayor Ketcher.
Great, thank you very much. So is that a storm pond that's included in that? Is that a storm pond, or is that an actual lake?
It's a storm pond, a stormwater management facility.
Okay, so
it'll be a wet pond, so it'll appear to be a lake, but it's not. You can't swim in it or anything. So
okay, no, I was just curious about that because there's lakes below the top of banks. So I've driven over there a few times to take a look at it, and I think. At the open house, I think you've done a really good job working with the people at Point of Pins. I probably wouldn't have been quite so giving because I always in my mind pictured that there would be maybe a row of estate lots and then a bunch of density on the other side. So
yeah, we actually had that approach in the beginning, and there's two ways of doing it, is exactly as you described, or backing on or fronting on. So and there's benefits to both. And it's a very sensitive area. These people have lived there for their whole lives in a lot of cases. So we felt it important that we reach out to them and see what their preference is, because we can design it either way. And this was their preference, and so this is the way we approached it.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying in speaking with them at the open house. I think they're quite pleased with the way you've worked with them. So I'm fine with what's kind of going on. I also don't understand the stand of trees that's out there, because as I drive in, other than we've got urban forest, coming down the buffers and that like that, I kind of don't understand that, but that's a question that I would have to put to administration, because I guess my biggest concern about that is when you've got a stand of trees, you've got a stand of area for kids to go in and build fires. So it's just a comment that I'm making. So, but I think you've done an incredible job working with the people at Point of Pins. Thank you.
Okay, we're still in round one, so I'm going to go to Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. So one of the concerns that was raised in your presentation by your engagements was getting larger lots. And just today, I think just coming off of what Mayor talked about. So what fraction of that build up is going to be for estate lots? Because I've heard a lot of people looking for those types of lots in the community, and there aren't any.
I would say zero. We're compelled by the Metropolitan Region Board to give 35 units per net developable hectare, and that's a very, very difficult number to achieve with estate lots, more or less impossible. If we were to do any estate lots, then the corresponding effect would be more high rises. Right. You have to create that density somewhere, so the notion of estate lots is really
it's a foregone thing. Eh?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to slip in a comment here, and it's along the same lines as Mayor Ketcher. My comment was just going to be that I really do appreciate the work that you guys have done with the existing residents in that neighborhood, because I don't believe you had to, and it could have looked, like Mayor Ketcher had pointed out, with houses facing them, and it certainly makes my job easier when you take the time to make that existing residential neighborhood happy. So I really do appreciate that effort. So I will go to Councillor Harris on round two.
Chuck, so looking at the initial concept to the revised concept diagram that you've included in our presentation, so in the initial concept, it shows the existing apartment site with some land and a funny triangular piece that trends off on the south side of Wilshire Boulevard. That's obviously outside of the study area, but anything you do here has to be considered against the development in that area to the north. And also the existing commercial obviously has some of the tree stand on it, which will ultimately probably be removed when the developer gets to the point where he's going to develop that land again outside your study area. But I'm looking at contiguous development and how it blends together. So that's owned by a separate, well, probably at least two property owners.
The piece to the north is owned by a separate developer. The intervening piece is owned by the city. It's a road allowance, actually. And then
what, in the tree stand area?
Yep. There's a piece of road allowance that runs right through it.
From north to south?
East-west.
East-west.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you look at in the existing revised concept where it says existing tree stand 2 acres, 4.9 acres, is that city right of way somewhere on that?
It's included. That you could see the jog on the upper right hand corner. That little jog is the city right of way. If you can see that there.
Can you point that out?
I don't know if
I'm missing that.
I'm not sure if I. Oh, there. There it is. Okay, I do have a mouse. Oh, right there. See this little piece here? So that's the top of the right of way, and then this is the bottom of the right of way, and that goes all the way along here.
Sorry, I'm missing that.
The mouse. So you see this bottom of this where the walkway is on. Can you see the mouse on this side, on the right hand side piece? Kind of there. It's kind of small.
I can't see the mouse.
You can't see it?
Okay. Okay. Well, in any event, I guess what I will probably need to do then is to share my concerns with administration rather than trying to negotiate it or discuss it today. Because I do have concerns, as I think I was suggesting to you and asking the question about the tree stand, because I see it has higher and better value. So I'll have those discussions with administration from planning perspective. Whether that changes anything, I guess that will have to be determined, but I think the opportunity exists to put trees elsewhere to create better buffers than on the highway. So I'll leave that at that, and we can go on. Thanks.
Councillor Blizzard?
Just one more. I had a couple, but one was answered already. So just with a smaller part, because of the tree stand, which is nice. I know I just walked through our prairie today, and it's nice to have a big stand of trees that you can walk through. But I haven't paid attention to what those trees are, whether they're valuable. But with that being there, it means all the other parks are smaller, correct?
That's correct. We have a certain finite amount of dedication.
Mm-hmm. So with all of the other parks being smaller, is there still going to be room for some sports fields, some recreational areas, or are they going to be, as you term them, pocket parks, so small that there's not much can be done?
You could. We have the school site on the south end, adjacent to the boundary. You can see the school site. So that school site is staying the same, and the expectation, we put it there so that the south area, the quarter section to the south, could also have a school site joined to it, and so that you could double the size or even more, and that area is definitely available for sports fields and the like. The plan on the left had some larger open spaces. There was a large activity area adjacent to the stormwater management pond, where we kind of were looking for a bit of an activity area, some gathering spaces, maybe a farmer's market, who knows, whatever, right? Those types of things on that space, and then a little bit of a larger space inside. So that's kind of 3 parks, whereas the other one had, the one on the right, the revised one, had the larger tree stand, still had the school site, and then the parks inside were smaller, more pocket parks. So that was the...
And I think just to add to that, from administration, that was one big... not concern, but a direction to go was to have more parks, but smaller parks. So that's where, and then the tree stand was also the other comment. So between both of those, that's where we ended up having more parks, but smaller parks.
Okay, so going with that, would the plans be, and I don't know if you do this or if that's in the next level, would there be room for even playgrounds in some of those parks? Would that be something we could expect?
Yeah, we would expect, well, certainly on the plan to the left, on the original one, the parks are larger, so play structures probably would fit play structures on both sides. They don't take up very much space. Things like a soccer field and those type of things you wouldn't have. You would have that on the school sites.
Okay, I guess that concerns me, but okay, thanks.
Councillor Abitoy.
Just back to the lot sizes. I'm just curious, what's the largest building pockets? What's the size of the largest building pocket we're going to be seeing in this space?
I'll answer that one. I think right now the market is kind of pushing to more of a 32 pocket is kind of the highest. 36 pocket. So 36 is usually a triple car garage. That's where people kind of want to sit on an estate lot. And then your kind of move up product would be your 28 pocket, 26 pocket.
So you're going to have 36 building pockets in this area?
We'll provide it if the market wants it. Knowing now that percentage is quite low, like I'm talking 5% of population kind of takes that 36%. We'll definitely have that 5% somewhere, and we'll place it in spots where it makes sense.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, thanks. Just on the comments and discussion around park spaces, I was just trying to look it up. There's a park in Spruce Grove that has a similar sized wetland to the one proposed in the drawings here. They do incorporate sort of like naturalized playground spaces and structures, workout areas, things like this. Could that be in the plan for this stormwater management facility? Is that something that developers are you looking at potentially doing and making that stormwater facility kind of inclusive of a park and play space area?
Just to answer that one. We had, at the original concept, we had kind of that park space next to the pond there, just so that we could have more of a space where people could come, like you said, have a playground or workout space while the water was there, walk around the pond, and have more of that node center rec. I think some of the comments coming back from administration was that it might not be as safe to have some of that recreational activities closer to the pond, and so that area had kind of shrunk in our new concept. So not to say that we can't have that there, but that area is now smaller, so you could put like the naturalized logs where people can go on and jump and stuff like that. So that can still be there, but I think the intent was to not have it promoted or focused for that to be a place of activity or constant activity there.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Katcher.
So my question's more to Mr. Fleming. So based on the comments, are you with me? Based on the comments that we're hearing today, some concerns about tree stands or size of parks. So what happens next? I mean, when does council get to weigh in to say, maybe we'd like bigger parks as opposed to a tree stand, or maybe, like other than just this comes to first reading and it's the revised one and we say, yeah, no, we don't like that. Like, and I don't know what, council's looking at entirely, but, I'm hearing maybe bigger parks as opposed to a big old tree stand out there.
So through the chair, we are noting the feedback from council today. I mean, in a simplistic form, it would have come back to council for first reading and council could refer it back then with the feedback, but I'll discuss it with the team after today and we may look at revising that.
Okay, and I guess only my comments. We live here. I live in West Park. I see how people enjoy the parks and when we can actually put amenities in them. People like going down to the lake. People go around the storm ponds. I know we got to keep them off during the winter, but people love the greenery. And as Councillor Blizzard said, the small pocket parks don't do a lot for people in this community. It's just a trail that runs through. So, yeah, I'd be curious. I would like to have more conversation about it.
I'll just insert a comment in then. I guess I would say that it's hard to determine from this picture how big that park actually is. And so, like if you gave me a number, I wouldn't be able to visualize that, right? So I do think for me, like I love the tree stand in the corner. I don't have a problem with that, actually. I don't mind that at all. Yeah, because I don't think that these parks are teeny tiny little parks. I mean, I know we're calling them pocket parks, but I think that they're still a nice piece of green space. So I don't know, personally, I like the tree stands as well. Going into round 3, we've got Councillor Harris.
Looking at the phasing plan with stage 4, and you touched on that briefly earlier, Brittany and Chuck. There's private ownership on top of Bank over the river. I realize that. That's not obviously owned by Landrex. So probably most of the area below the top of Bank is owned by somebody other than that, or it's Crown land. There was once the, oh, okay, so that's Crown land.
No, it's owned. It's privately owned.
Is it owned by the gravel extraction company that actually mined the gravel out of there?
My understanding, Sherway was I think doing a lot of the extraction, but my understanding is on the slide here, the piece that's on the east side of the power line, the purple triangular piece.
Yep.
My understanding is that same person owns most of the green area as well.
Okay, so it is private ownership. And so that person, so ultimately it's not Landrex's responsibility. So if that person chooses to do something with it, it would have to undertake the study.
Yes.
So ultimately you guys, I got the impression that you guys are going to be doing stage 4 study, but if it's not Landrex's interest, they wouldn't do it.
No.
Okay,
no,
good.
Not.
Okay, so that's...
And just to point out, I mean, he had attended the open house and he was quite happy with the kind of the where the plan is today. So
okay, so it might take that individual down the road to look at potential development.
I would think so.
Is most of that land, second question, most of that land below the 1 in 100 or above the 1 in 100 year floodplain? From my recollection, looking at the floodplain maps, where the lake is, probably not, but up towards the roadway plan, it ultimately would be above the 1 in 100. So it is developable, correct?
My and I don't have that map in front of me, but I believe everything kind of east of the power line is likely above that 100 year floodplain.
Yeah, it is from my recollection. Anyways, I asked that question only so far as that's outside of the context of what we're going to be dealing with going forward with Landrex's planning.
That's
context.
correct. And that exact point is another one of those reasons why it's a special study area, because those issues would have to be uncovered and delineated and confirmed.
But not that something that Landrex is responsible for. Okay, thanks for that clarification. And those are all my questions.
Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else waiting to ask questions. So I think next steps is we are waiting on the city for comment. Is that correct, Ms. Felling? Yeah. So thank you for coming today, and we really appreciate the information.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brittany.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah. I've been asked for a comfort break. If we can take 5 minutes. Be back in your chairs at 3:08. Welcome back. Next on the agenda, we have our Brad review. Welcome to Jesse Bailey, our Director of Corporate Communications.
Perfect, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Your Worship, and members of Council. As you stated, my name is Jesse Bailey, and I'm the Director of Corporate Communications. I'm here to present a high-level overview of the city's brand review project, including a brief project background, key findings, and next steps. This project reviewed the city's current branding and marketing efforts. We aimed to ensure our assets reflected Fort Saskatchewan's unique characteristics and values, and aligned our branding with the needs and expectations of our community. The project was conducted in 3 phases. Phase 1 involved a technical audit of our existing brand and marketing assets to identify gaps and opportunities. Phase 2 focused on public engagement through surveys, workshops, and interviews to gather input on brand awareness and perceptions. And Phase 3 was an internal review to evaluate our processes and policies, ensuring our internal services meet the needs of the departments and community. The Phase 1 technical audit focused on our full family of brands and marketing assets. A sample is shown on screen, highlighting our master brand in the middle, surrounded by various sub-brands, including department brands. Our Phase 1 findings highlighted several positive aspects of our city's brand and marketing efforts. Our materials are generally healthy, residents demonstrated pride in the community, and administration is committed to promoting a strong city image. However, the audit recommended a few areas to enhance and streamline our work. It identified the benefit of a citywide brand strategy. This strategy will help us establish a clear structure and relationship between the master brand and the sub-brands, preventing brand confusion and strengthening awareness and adoption. There's also an opportunity to complete or streamline various city and department brand assets, such as logo packages and brand guidelines, to promote a more cohesive and unified brand image. This includes exploring a designer-friendly version of our current master logo to address resizing and complexity constraints. This new addition would not replace our current logo, but it would complement it when needed. Finally, there is an opportunity to reinforce consistent citywide brand standards, which will help us maintain a professional brand image across all departments. Phase 2 public engagement focused on our master brand logo and the 6 department sub-brands that are shown here. Findings revealed a strong, positive perception and pride in our master brand and logo. There was no strong indication that a redesign or replacement is required. Therefore, we are not recommending any major changes to the master logo. However, as mentioned in Phase 1 findings, we propose exploring a designer-friendly addition to this logo. As well, feedback suggests that enhancing the representation of community diversity in our branding efforts is important, including our photography, social media content, and marketing materials. This approach ensures more community members can see themselves reflected in our brand and in our communications, fostering a sense of belonging and engagement. This helps build trust and strengthens the connection between the city and the diverse population. The findings regarding the 6 departments revealed several opportunities. By improving consistency in their marketing approach and graphic standards, and fostering overall brand family cohesion, departments can better achieve their marketing goals and effectively support the master brand as needed. In summary, our Phase 2 findings indicate the master brand is well received, with a few minor areas for improvement. It's also found that department brands and logos would benefit from being streamlined and enhanced. Next steps include increasing diversity content in our city materials and strengthening department branding and marketing to boost awareness and appeal. Moving into Phase 3, The internal review findings indicate that departments may benefit from stronger integration with corporate communications and vice versa. It also suggests that communications team may be too limited or small to effectively support high citywide brand and marketing standards. Additionally, the review found that marketing and advertising funds are currently allocated across different departments and managed by staff who may not entirely be familiar with the process of marketing, which has led to a couple of challenges. Next steps include exploring the possibility of establishing corporate communications as more of an in-house agency. This will ensure that we can effectively provide the necessary day-to-day creative and media services that all departments require. This will involve evaluating alternative team sizes, structures, and costs. Consolidating marketing budgets under communications management will also streamline processes and help support consistent branding and marketing citywide. Implementing these recommendations may require future financial costs. Our team will explore and develop funding strategies, which we will include in our 2025 budget presentation later this year. Internally, streamlining brand management, consolidating marketing budgets, and increasing professional oversight is key. Externally, our focus will be on ensuring our branding is consistent and cohesive and represents the diversity of our community. To conclude, this brand review project provided us with valuable insights into our branding strengths and areas for improvement. By addressing these opportunities, we can ensure our brand accurately reflects and proudly represents Fort Saskatchewan and resonates with our community. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Councillor Harris first.
Mr. Bailey, looking at, you had 4 handouts. There was the summary report, Appendix A, Appendix B, and Appendix C, and those were detailed, and I can understand why you did that. Why did you not include any of the images that you did show us in the presentation in the report that came circulated in our council agenda package? Was there a reason why you didn't have the images there?
Through your chair to Councillor Harris, no particular reason. I could have and probably would have been helpful.
Yeah, and that's not a criticism. When I was sitting there reading this stuff, as we all probably did, I was just thinking, well, what's the image? And so I was kind of left a loss as to what the image was. I said, and then I was thinking, well, what is our logo? And I, sometimes you're not sure what you recall is the right thing. So that was just a question. So, and thank you for answering that.
No, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Blizzard.
Thanks for the presentation, and I agree. As soon as you put up those images, I thought that would have been very helpful, and I assume you had that when you were talking to people, that they saw all the different images, because that definitely would have been helpful for me.
Yeah, through your chair to Councillor Blizzard, the images were included on the survey, and they're included in any workshop as well. I guess one issue with just showing the images is it really sticks to the logos only. And we are trying to get a sense of all the marketing materials. So when we did ask that question, we showed more, but there's just so much to show. But yeah, those images are definitely helpful. So we wanted to include them in this presentation, but I can add them in later.
And
on.
I assume when you're talking about the main one, you're talking about the sprocket and horse design is our main one, right?
Yep, that's our master brand.
Yeah, okay. I guess the other one is just not a question, but we don't have to wait for a motion here, right? So just more of a comment. In the report, I don't know if it was you or someone else put in as examples how Fort Mac, Sherwood Park, Grand Prairie, oh, look at these images. I looked at all 3 and was not impressed with any of them. Fort Mac is just this zigzag kind of where they're located more than, I had to look at it a few times going backwards F, where's the backwards F? And then I realized I think that's what you meant. Just kind of boring. Sherwood Park, I remember the city had those waves a number of years ago. I think maybe when I was first on council or even before that. I know our council when I was on before didn't put them in. And tons of feedback about how they're very generic because we're not alone. There was a ton of communities, maybe they're still using them, but it was a very boring one. And then going to Grand Prairie, it's the opposite. I looked at it and went, I had to look. The link that was in there didn't even go to it. It went to a website that didn't even show it. So finally I Googled whatever comments were in there. I found it and I thought, oh my God, that's the opposite. It looks more like a, what do you call them? The shields, where there's so busy, there's so much in there, it's almost over the top busy.
Yep.
So I don't think we have bad logos, but I get where you're coming from, where to try and tie them all together in some way, even if it was only in the color aspect, that we have our differences, but maybe unite on some. So I think this is a good overall process. Some of it was way too detailed for me. I did look through it, but anyway, yeah, it doesn't hurt to look at it. Just don't get rid of that one.
Yep, no, I appreciate that feedback, and to provide clarity, the comparison data that you were talking about with Fort Mac and Grand Prairie, etc., that was done by a third-party vendor. As part of their technical audit, they just try to look for comparisons, look for best practices. So they picked those three. We didn't guide it, and I have similar thoughts to you on those other logos that they shared.
Yeah, don't touch the logo. That's definitely the feedback that was prevalent.
Yes.
Mayor Ketcher.
Thank you. So I had to go back after the last presentation and find an old hoodie that had the Crest logo on it, which was green, and it was just the two waves. So, but I still have that hoodie, and it still isn't impactful when I wear it. So I guess the question that I have is for your next steps now, and I know you said you're going to talk about in the 2025 budget, but so for next steps, so what are departments allowed to do? So are they now, do they have to come through you when they're doing something that's marketing related? You know, what's the process for the departments rather than creating their own stuff?
Well, we're still trying to figure, through your chair to your worship, we were trying to figure that out still. A lot of discussions, we want to make sure that everyone is involved at the table at appropriate times. There's already a policy in place that says that they should be going through corporate communications to develop anything new or to hire on vendors or anything like that. So I think it might just be more of a point of reinforcing it a bit more. But ultimately, we are trying to strengthen our relationships together so that we're involved with anything that's created. And the master brand strategy will outline exactly if new brands are ever developed, how they must look and some other mandatory elements of them. But yeah, currently right now, and even centralizing the budgets will help, because sometimes some brands are developed because, you know, under minimal budgets, and that presents a lot of problems down the road. So we're trying to address that and ensure that if anything is created, that there's a strategy and there's appropriate funding and oversight.
Okay, great. Well, keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Abatoye.
Thank you for your presentation, Jesse. Just want to say thank you for all the hard work. I think it's important for us to clarify what our identity is. And I think that's what we're trying to do with this process. And of course, you've heard back from the people, power to the people, you know, let's leave it as is. But I'm curious about the name of our city, right? You know, I know it's kind of interesting to be named after, you know, after a province, right? And, you know, people confusing that with us being in a different province. I'm just wondering, did you hear back about that at all? And what kind of feedback did you hear?
Through the chair to Councillor Abatoye, we definitely heard that. Even we had questions on our own side. It didn't sound like we'd have appetite to consider changing the name of the city. So we just have to address it in different ways. For example, the word Saskatchewan does provide a lot of confusion for certain people who aren't familiar with us. It also provides a lot of challenges in terms of SEO for websites, just us appearing over other Saskatchewan words. So right now there's not much we can do other than just ensure that we mention the names properly. We have a logo right now that has Alberta underneath it that we use if our logo or our communications are ever going outside of the city. So I think there's a lot of steps in place, and we just need to reinforce that a little bit.
Okay, I'm just curious if we were to change our name, just what would that look like? What would that process look like?
It would be a big process. It would go probably through public engagements. Yeah, I think there was a name of the city that we even looked at. I can't remember if it was Birch Hills or Birch something. I can't remember. But anyways, it would be a big engagement thing. So we'd want to say, you know, what should the name be, or what, you know, should the name represent, etc. And then it would be much like a massive redesign. So everything would have to change.
Yeah,
that says our name.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Well, great job.
Oh, thank you.
I am not seeing any other questions. Next steps, I'm assuming that your next steps are incorporated into your work plans and perhaps seeing you at budget this fall.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, next we have bylaw C11-24, responsible pet ownership bylaw update. We have Corinne Rayner, Director of Protective Services, and Sergeant Ben Sharp, our new Commander-in-Chief of Municipal Enforcement. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Your Worship and members of Council. My name is Corinne Rayner and I am the Director of Protective Services. With me is Sergeant Ben Sharp, Municipal Enforcement Supervisor. We are here to present a new responsible pet ownership bylaw, C11-224. This name change of the bylaw is to better reflect its purpose for the regulation and control of domesticated animals within the city. This bylaw is vital for ensuring pet owners that their companions are protected and valued, while also addressing concerns from non-pet owners. The bylaw's role in promoting public health, safety, and harmony underscores its importance, making it a foundational element to a pet-friendly community. Animal control is a significant part of municipal enforcement's workload. Some of the stats displayed here just demonstrate that workload. In 2023, we saw 731 animal control files that were generated. We do take a very educational approach when it comes to this bylaw, and we had issued 33 violation tickets in 2023, which is a bit lower than we're used to. We've had some staff changes and turnovers in leadership within municipal enforcement, and that is one of the contributing factors to that number. We reunited 82 animals with their owners. 14 animals went to rescues. Animal licenses sold throughout the year were just over 3,000, so 3,460 animal licenses were sold. And just that bottom stat there is the outstanding license renewals. So one of the issues that we're seeing typically is every year about 700 to 1,000 licenses are not getting renewed within the year. So this is an added workload. We do a project every 2 years where we will contact all of those pet owners and find out what the status has changed with their animal. To help council with all the changes that we've created within this bylaw, there is a summary document provided as Appendix B. I've also highlighted the areas within the bylaw in yellow that have been changed for your ease of reading. I'm going to highlight the more significant changes to the bylaw. We have cleaned up the language and done some housekeeping items. The goal is to address the areas where our officers have had difficulty in enforcement of the bylaw, as well as address concerns that we've heard over the past few years from our residents and our pet owners. The first area of changes is to the definitions. We've added 7 new definitions to better reflect some of the new sections that we've also added. So attack, disabled person, foster dog or cat, harass, injure, poultry, and threaten have all been added as definitions to help with clarity. Under animal licenses, we have added a new section, 3.6. Like I mentioned before, how we have those outstanding licenses each year, it's difficult for us to contact all of those pet owners. So we're adding a clause in here about that they need to update municipal enforcement on the status of their pet or if they change their address within 15 days. Section 4 is for the regulation of dogs and cats. We have expanded section 4.8 to include different levels of aggression with animals. So it reads, the owner of a dog or cat shall not permit the animal to chase, threaten, harass, attack, injure, or kill. And those are all separated out within that section of the bylaw. Section 4.9 is also new, and it reads a dog or cat that intrudes onto the property is an exception if it was attacked by another animal, as it is intruding onto that animal's territory. So it gives our officers a little bit of discretion there with that section 4.8 and 4.9. Section 5 is also a new section for securing animals in vehicles. No person shall allow an animal to be riding outside of the passenger cab of a motor vehicle. Section 5.2 is a person may allow that animal to be outside of the passenger cab of the motor vehicle if it is. It goes on to explain the various ways it has to be within an enclosed trailer or cargo area, ventilated kennel, or securely tethered to that cargo area. This is a traffic safety issue as well as safety of those animals. Section 7 deals with noise from an animal. We have changed this section. Officers have had a lot of difficulty in enforcing noise from an animal or barking dogs. We used to have the words, an animal cannot bark or howl excessively. The word excessive has been very subjective and not easily enforced. So we have added specific timeframes and durations to allow for better enforcement of the barking. So it's for a period of 1 hour between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. or continuous for 20 minutes after 10 p.m. and between 10 and 7 a.m. Those timeframes align with the community standards bylaw for nighttime hours and will really help our officers in the enforcement of barking dogs. Section 9 covers the designation of a restricted dog. The changes in this section will allow municipal enforcement to designate a dog restricted much sooner than the previous bylaw. We used to have to wait until an animal was convicted of an offense. So the pet owner would either have to pay their fine or go through the court processes. That could take up to a year. And we were not able to deem a dog restricted until after that court process was complete. So now with the new wording, the bylaw now reads that a peace officer who believes on reasonable and probable grounds that a dog has damaged property, chased, attacked, or bitten any person or animal, chased, attacked, bitten a person or animal causing physical injury, threatened or created the reasonable apprehension of a threat to a person or another animal, or has previously been determined under the Dangerous Dog Act, or a similar legislation from another municipality. Section 9.2 was also revised to allow peace officers more flexibility with the conditions that we place on a restricted dog. Under the old bylaw, the pet owner had to comply with all of the conditions that were for a restricted dog. Now with some of the changes in wordings, we've added the word and or, so that allows our peace officers some discretion in what conditions we place on that restricted dog, and it helps out with each situation is different and the severity of that is also different, so it will allow our officers a little more discretion. 9.2D is a new section and states that any other condition or condition deemed appropriate by our peace officer program supervisor. Section 9.5 is new and adds that during the appeal period for a restricted dog and until the final disposition has been given, the dog owner shall ensure that the dog subject to that declaration is muzzled at all times when off the property of the owner. This provision makes sure that the dog is handled safely while outdoors and abides by the conditions until that appeal period is up. So that will just ensure public safety in those restricted dogs having those conditions. Section 11.5 is new for provisions of seizure and impounding of animals. It allows for our department to seek veterinary treatment or to humanely euthanize an animal that is gravely sick or injured that we come into contact with. We will, through consultation with a veterinarian, of course, in every instance. It's something that our office has still been doing anyways, but we've added that into the bylaw to frame that up. Any animal that comes into our care, if it's gravely injured, we will immediately take it to a vet. So we've just added into the bylaw to cover that off. And then 11.6, the cost of that treatment would then be charged back to that pet owner. Section 12.2 is new. This section ensures that any device to secure the animal be of adequate length so that the animal can move about, and ensures its safety and its health. Officers have come across animals that have such a short tether to their kennel or their location in the yard, and this will just ensure a little bit more health and safety for an animal. Section 12.3 is new. We've taken some of the sections out of the Animal Protection Act and added them into our bylaw. The reason that we're doing that is that the Animal Protection Act must go through the court system when we want to lay a charge under the Animal Protection Act. Bringing it into the bylaw will allow our officers to deal with those types of incidents on a quicker and much smoother process than going through the Animal Protection Act. So this section just allows provisions in our bylaw about the care and control of an animal. So owners must ensure that the animal has adequate food and water, provide the animal with adequate care when the animal is wounded or ill, provide the animal with reasonable protection from injurious heat or cold, and providing that animal with adequate shelter, ventilation, and space, and not to abandon the animal in any place or location. Section 12.4 reads that an owner or person responsible for the care of a dog, nuisance dog, restricted dog, or cat shall ensure that it does not upset any waste receptacle or scatter garbage on public or private property. Section 12.8 has had a revision, and 2 new subsections were added in here to prevent people from letting an animal loose. So it does read, a person shall not untie, loosen, or otherwise free a dog or cat which has been tied or otherwise restrained. A person shall not open a gate, door, or other opening in a fence or enclosure which a dog, nuisance dog, restricted dog, or cat, or any other animal has been confined, and thereby allow that animal to run at large. And lastly, we have updated the fine schedule. So Schedule A of the bylaw has our fees, our fines for these violations. We've done a full review of each violation and done comparators with other communities, and we did increase a few of our fines. Those are highlighted in Schedule A of the bylaw. We've increased the ones that were $100 to $150, and some did go up to $250. The majority of fines that we would issue are $150 or $250, and then there are $500 and $1,000 fines for more serious offenses when a dog or cat injures another animal, is an example, or an attack. So this concludes the update and the overview of the changes that we've made to the Responsible Pet Ownership Bylaw. Some of the next steps will be we'll receive your feedback today, and then we will take that back and make any changes that were necessary and bring the bylaw back to you on July the 2nd for 3 readings. And then once that bylaw is passed, we will be doing extensive communication with the community, working with our corporate comms, and developing a responsible pet ownership bylaw to distribute out in the community as well. So Sergeant Sharp and I are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much. There's a full screen of yours, so they're coming at you. I'll start with Mayor Ketcher.
Okay, so I've got a bunch, so maybe round 2. But question, you've added poultry as a allowed. Why would you do that, given that council has not permitted people to raise chickens in their yards? That's number 1.
Through the chair to Mayor Katcher, we haven't added poultry. Poultry is not allowed within the bylaw. We've just defined what poultry means. Under the definition of livestock, it states that poultry is there. We did have a file this past year where where we had to deal with poultry and someone in possession of poultry. So we just have defined it a little bit further within the bylaw. It comes under the definition of livestock, and livestock is prohibited within the city, and so is poultry.
So I guess the question is, in your definition, should you be adding that it is livestock? Because when I read it, I would have read it as, oh, I can have a chicken now. So I know it's livestock, but and then the second one, you put bees is prohibited, but we do allow for bees if you have a development permit.
Bees are prohibited?
No. Permitted if you get a development permit.
Mm-hmm.
So does there need to be some clarity on that? Because how can you prohibit it if you get a development permit and we permit it?
Through the chair to Councillor Mayor, I see what you're saying, so we'll have a look at that to make sure that it's clear in the bylaw.
Okay. You can come back to me on a round 2.
Thank you. Councillor Harris?
We got a letter from local resident Greg Christensen. Have you had a chance to see what his commentary was, or suggestion, or request for action under the new responsible legislation?
Through the chair to Councillor Harris, I did have a look at that letter today, and was that the one for more enforcement around dogs at large? Okay.
Yeah.
So yes, I have had a look at that, and Sergeant Sharp and I have had a conversation around that. And yes, I definitely would agree that we can do more enforcement with dogs and cats at large. And we'll definitely be looking at that throughout the remainder of the year. One of the items that we want to get going on is bike patrols on our paths. A lot of times when an officer shows up on those paths, quickly those dogs are leashed up, and when they see a uniformed officer or our patrol vehicle in the area, then our officers aren't necessarily seeing the violation as it's happening. So we're aware of that, and we're definitely going to work towards getting some more bike patrols and things like that.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I totally agree with his observations, because like Councillor Blizzard, we're ardent users of the trails. And while she owns a dog and she's a very responsible dog owner, there are an incredible number of people that allow their dogs to run at large. And I had a negative interaction with somebody when their dog was off leash and came running at my wife. And I asked the guy to put the dog on the leash, and I thought I was going to have to take him out. He was so aggressive. He was a dick, and he was nasty. I would say the majority of people that run their dogs probably just do so because they think they can get away with it, and they're responsible in other regards, I suspect. But there are people in town that believe it's their right to allow their dog to do whatever the dog wants. And I think we need to definitely adhere to better enforcement in that regard. So anything that can do that, definitely I fully support. So thank you.
Thank you. Go on to Councillor Blizzard.
I have got a whole pile of questions too, so I'll probably be around a couple of times. I'll just go down my list though. So thanks for the presentation. Thanks for all the information. It's a very valuable document. How do we determine restricted breed? And I went through it and I didn't see anywhere where it said, here's the list of restricted breeds. Is that elsewhere, or did I miss it in my rush to read?
Through the chair to Councillor Blizzard. It's not a restricted breed. What we would deem a dog restricted after it has committed an offense, and so we've listed those types of offenses, and it's usually an aggressive, a dog bite or an attack, damage to property or threatening people. So that's when a dog will be then deemed as a restricted dog under the bylaw,
as opposed to nuisance dog.
Correct.
So we have two differences in them. Okay. That makes sense. I'll just go down my list. Number 2. So it says on here maximum 3 dogs and 3 cats. Do we change that? Wasn't it 1 point maximum 5 pets?
Am I on here? Perfect. Madam Chair, through to Councillor Blizzard. I don't recall it being a 5 pet maximum.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, it's always been a 3 of each animal, so 3 dogs.
So it can have
and 3
six,
cats. So
not a
6
big
total.
difference. Okay,
Yes.
just clarifying that. And so what if you tied in with that? It's 2.5 questions. What if I'm pet sitting? You know, if my daughter's out of town, I have 2 dogs and she has 2 dogs. Not that I do, but somebody kind of a scenario. Is that okay? If they're quiet, I guess nobody's complaining. What would happen?
On our end of things, you would not be the owner of that animal. We use our discretion with that if you're house sitting or babysitting for an animal, that wouldn't be something that we would prohibit you from doing, even though you're going over that maximum allowance of dogs. But that's always something that we check with if we receive a report of that, is we're checking to see, are these all your animals that you own, or some of them that you're babysitting, caring for someone else.
So I can still have that dog birthday party? Kidding. Okay, I've got more, but maybe come around to me again then.
Sounds good. Councillor Nguyen?
Yeah, thanks. I have a few questions, and they should be fairly simple, just around Section 7 noise. So this part changed, and I guess previously it was a little bit discretionary as to the threshold of noise that would warranted or merit issuing a violation ticket. Could you speak around just what rubric or in, I guess, duration of barking would have previously merited a ticket without any finite time frame?
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Nguyen. So what we would use to determine if something was excessive barking previous to this bylaw, using our current one, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
So we would typically try to use this same template of taking into account the proximity, duration, time of day, nature and use of the area, how it's affecting others, and we would try and use the same time frame when determining if it is excessive. That constant 1 hour between kind of the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and then that 20 minutes anytime after that during those nighttime hours, if you would.
Okay.
So we would attempt to use this, what we're proposing for the new bylaw currently. It's just not officially
in place.
on
Okay.
place, yeah.
And then so what, because I could see some ambiguity around continuous. So what, how do you interpret the definition of that? You know, within a 1 hour time frame, a dog could bark 5 minutes, you know, take a break for 15 minutes, bark a few more times. So what is continuous?
And that's where it becomes, even with the way that it's worded in the proposed new bylaw, that there is going to be some subjectivity to that, which could vary slightly from officer to officer dealing with that. But that's why we have our logs that we ask people to fill out as well, so that we can track exactly how much time is between the barking periods.
Okay, so and then a log is issued to a complainant to fill out for a certain amount of time, I can imagine. Is a log given to a pet owner as well, so that there's some sort of validation in that if it escalates?
It can be. Primarily, we are giving it to the reporting party, and it can be offered. It's not within our policy to give that as well to the animal owner. It can be if the officer deems that it would be appropriate, but for sure, if the reporting party is requesting it, we're giving it to them for sure.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask one last small question, just in the same subject area? So I guess what prevents a complainant to say, you know, that dog across the street kind of woke me up one time in the middle of the day. I was napping, and I didn't like that, so I want to fill out this a barking log. You know what? I guess where's the burden of proof? And because obviously you're not going to be there listening to if a dog is barking or not. So what merit does that have? How is it substantiated to make a decision to issue a violation ticket?
So it's explained to the reporting party when that log is given to them, when they're reporting this as excessive barking, that's what we use to base whether we deem that it is excessive barking. And we explain to them that if we do come to that conclusion based off of their log, that they would be subpoenaed and responsible to go to court for trial if there was a plead not guilty that was submitted. So then that burden of proving that falls on the reporting party, and they would have to be on the stand in court under oath verifying that.
Okay, thank you.
On first round, I have Councillor Abatoy next.
Thank you for your presentation. I want to actually start by commending you for the name change and positive language, right? Changing from animal control bylaw to responsible pet owners. I feel like it puts the onus on the pet owners to be responsible, right? And so I thought that was really sweet. So thank you for that change. And so the comments about the bees, I also had that in my notes. And what I was going to recommend is, I mean, you can have bees there, but maybe include except permitted through the beekeeping license, because there is a beekeeping program, right, in the city that allows residents to have bees in their homes. To my question, so just to be clear, so is it just dogs and cats that are allowed in the city? Are those the only animals that are permitted?
Madam
Because
Chair, through to Councillor Abatoy, we also permit pigeons, and I believe rabbits are in here as well. They're also permitted, and there's a number limit on those as well. And just to go back to the bees, they are listed as a prohibited animal, but the bylaw does allow for an exemption that you'd have to apply for a permit having that beekeeper's license and a course that you have to complete that would allow you to be able to have those bees on your property.
Right, but if you just have, so you're saying on this bylaw, it's that's what you just said is stated on this bylaw?
Correct.
Okay, where?
In the regulations, other regulations, I believe.
So
through the chair, it's 10.1B.
10.1B.
A development permit has been issued by the city's development authority.
Okay, so you do have it there.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, thank you. My second question is, so just going back to the challenges you're having with renewal of pet licensing, and you said, it's been challenging to communicate with everyone. What's your mode of communication? Do you email them? Do you call them? Like how do you communicate with this pet owners that haven't renewed their licenses?
Through the chair to Councillor Abatoy. So at the end of the year, in November, 4 separate notices go out through via email or some through the mail, notifying pet owners that have previously registered and gotten a license. So they will notify them that your pet license is coming up for renewal. So there are 4 times where we send out those reminder notices throughout the months leading up to that.
And it's an email.
There's some are emailed and some are mailed. It depends on their preferences that they've put, how they like to be communicated with.
Right. Okay. No, because I wasn't clear because you made a comment about not being able to reach everybody, right? So I wasn't sure if you were calling them, because that would be very stressful, right? But if it's an email, then an email can be sent to everybody at once, right?
Through the chair to Councillor Abatoy, yes, it can be a lot of administrative work when we have 700 to 1,000 licenses that didn't get renewed. Our officers end up contacting. So we'll have a project where we try to reach out again through the phone and contact that pet owner and follow up as to why they haven't renewed their license. Some of them have no longer owned that animal or have moved away. And so we are contacting them through the phone number that they've listed on their license.
Okay. Well, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thanks.
Next on round 1 is Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to, Corinne, take a minute and just continue to talk about the pet licensing program. How much time does it take from your staff, your department, to administer the licensing program on an annual basis? Your best estimate, please.
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, I don't have an estimate on the actual time, but I can kind of anecdotally tell you what's involved. So the issuing of the licenses not only involves our staff, it's a highly administrative process. It involves our administrative staff, our officers. There are front counter staff here at City Hall that sell licenses. We also involve the IT department in the tracking and administration of licenses as well. It is labor intensive as far as issuing licenses and then again following up and also enforcing. Does your animal have a license? And then the follow-up to not having renewed your license can be extensive administratively.
We've had some neighboring communities decide to do away with the annual licensing requirement. And I think in the case of perhaps the county of Strathcona at least, increase the penalties for non-compliance on some sorts of various violations. Would it be possible to get yourself or your department to give council a bit of a report on the perceived merits of an annual license and the perceived disadvantages or demerits to an annual license, including the estimated total city resources necessary to administer the program, the annual revenue, the nuisance factor, because I believe it exists for not only your staff who have to make the calls repeatedly, but those receiving the calls and may have died a year ago, for Pete's sake. Who knows, right? So would it be possible to get something from you that would maybe give council a bit of guidance on whether or not continuation of the annual licensing program makes sense?
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, yes, we could provide that to you when we bring the bylaw back. Yes, we can definitely provide a report to council on the merits of animal licensing.
Perfect, thank you.
I am next on the speaking order. So there's a couple places in this bylaw where it says in the opinion of. So I'm just curious of like how hard that is to actually enforce when it comes down to the opinion of an officer when he's, I'm assuming, talking with a homeowner that's not happy.
Madam Chair, in the opinion is really the officer's discretion and whether they believe on probable grounds if an offense took place. So we deal with that on a daily basis of having to weigh the probabilities of whether something happened or not and making sure that we have enough evidence on our end of things that we're comfortable and sure that we're making the correct decision. So not overly difficult.
Okay.
I don't think.
So we believe it's strong enough language in there for you to do your job effectively.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then I do get asked this question. I know we don't want pet owners to have 10 or 12 dogs in their house, but why is the number 3?
Madam Chair, the number has been 3 in the past. My personal opinion is just the size of yards that some people have, the capability to actually control anything more than 3 dogs would be quite difficult, I think. So I believe 3 is a good number to be at when you look at other surrounding communities as well, unless you're looking at a county where people would have acreages where they could have upwards of 5, 6, 7, 8 dogs. Most kind of urban centers are around that 3 mark.
Okay, thank you. I have a few people on round 2, so we'll start at the top. Mayor Ketcher.
Okay, thank you. 2 more questions. So you talk about poisonous snakes. What about snakes that can squeeze the life out of somebody? Because I thought once upon a time they prohibited snakes that were like pythons or the cobras and things like that. And I only asked that question because I know being on council once upon a time, somebody in Westland just let their big snake out, let it go. But it wasn't poisonous. So is that something that we should be considering? I only asked that because of the incident that had happened, I believe it was in Beaumont, with that type of snake.
Madam Chair, through to Mayor Ketcher, not something that we had looked at, but definitely something that we can can take away and look into, whether that's something we want to change wording wise within the bylaw for sure, and come back to you with that.
Okay, and I only asked that question because I just feel like I remember years ago they actually limited the size of what even the snake could be, and I know that's a long time ago. I don't know if Ms. Rayner remembers that or not, but that's one that just because of that incident, I just pointing it out. And the other one, so do we define nuisance cats as also feral cats, or nuisance cats is just somebody that owns a cat and is being a pain in the butt?
So those would be two different definitions, I guess you could say. This bylaw deals with as it is called, the responsible pet ownership bylaw. So those feral cats do not have an owner, so they wouldn't fall under the same definition as a nuisance cat.
And where do they show up anywhere in our bylaws to deal with them?
So feral cats currently are not within this bylaw. This bylaw deals with with domesticated animals.
Okay, but do they show up anywhere in any of our bylaws?
They do not show up anywhere in our bylaws right now, no.
So how do you deal with them when, are you allowing trapping of them to be relocated or disposed of? Like,
at this point in time, we are not, we're not dealing with feral cats. If someone suspects they have a feral cat in their yard and request a trap, we wouldn't be lending that out to them or allowing it to be rented to them, because we wouldn't have the means to deal with that animal. Any rescues or shelters that we have partnerships with do not take feral cats in, so then it puts us in a bind of what we're going to do with that cat.
Okay, and last question if I can. What about rescue animals for the households that decide to do rescues and have a whole bunch of extra animals in their house that don't belong to them, but they're rescuing them and then going to adopt them out? I went to one house one time, they had like about 6 and it was crazy.
So I believe the bylaw being proposed, they would fall under that limit of 3. I believe they'd be exempt from licensing, but they'd still only be able to have the 3 animals unless they applied for a permit to be a rescue or a shelter to have more.
Okay, and I only asked that question so that it doesn't become a gray area somewhere. So I'll leave it with you. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Blizzard.
I'm just going to go down my list again. I've got a few more. So the first one, 7.2B, and the new one, 1 hour of barking. That's quite long. Is that reasonable? Because I'm thinking, babies sleeping, shift workers in our area. Just like an hour of solid barking would be a long time. And I know I've heard it at times. It's different if the dog goes, woof, woof, but there's dogs that are barking like crazy.
Through Madam Chair to Councillor Blizzard, yes, it's just a time frame that we have added in there. I believe it is similar to some of the other bylaws in other municipalities we have to give some kind of a time frame. So that's what our officers have deemed would be excessive. Is we've given it as an hour.
Yeah,
So,
well,
yeah.
if it's any longer, that definitely warrants no warning. I'm not sure I'm sold on the hour. That still seems like a long time. So with the outstanding licenses, would it be maybe something in bold that could be put on there, just check off here, or if it's some online, our pet is deceased, rehomed, something, so that it makes it easier or obvious that we need an answer? Is that done, or is it possible?
through Madam Chair to Councillor Lizard. So through the in November, they get a letter to say that their license is up for renewal. Then again in January, they're getting another. So that we will contact them 4 times, and the letter states, just please update us if your status has changed. And we're just not getting those updates from people who have previously licensed their owners.
I know you said that before. I didn't.
Yeah.
I did hear that.
Yes.
But I'm just thinking, like, kind of like unsubscribing to an email. You will not receive these anymore. You know, something bold, whether it's at the bottom, let us know, and kind of maybe don't please let us know. Let us know if your animal is no longer with you for whatever reason. And maybe you might get an uptick in it a little bit. And I'll wait for that report, because I agree with Councillor Kelly that we need to look at that, whether it's maybe just lowering the amount of the license fee so that more people buy in, because we have more than 3,000 dogs and cats in town, looking at the number of houses. Okay, I do have more, but there's more people waiting.
All right, Councillor Kelly.
Is it against the law in Alberta to euthanize a feral cat?
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Kelly, not that I am aware of.
So we can handle feral cats, we just choose not to, is really the answer you should have given.
Our handling of feral cats, we would have to treat it as any other cat that we take in. And we have to hold for 3 days for it to become our property. And then at that point in time, yes, you could do what you wish with your own property.
Would it be possible, and I don't want consultants, and I don't want you to spend months on this, but would it be possible for you to consider providing council with a proposed plan of, or approaches, options to deal with feral cats? I have indicated in the past that we don't deal with feral cats in this community, and we haven't, I believe, for a long, long time. And they are a problem. And to say, well, we just can't find somebody to take them, so we don't deal with them, is an absolute cop-out in my mind. So would it be possible to get your department and yourself to give us a second write-up on some options to deal with feral cats, which I firmly expect will include euthanization?
Through the chair to Councillor Kelly, yes, we can provide a report with some options. We have been researching this and looking into it, and there are many different options that if council chose those directions, then we'll put that in a report for you to have a look at.
Take that as well. Thank you, Corinne.
I'm just going to jump in for a second. Mr. Fleming, the feral cat request and the license request, would information like that, would administration prefer a notice of motion to come for that kind of work, for then to come back to be debated by council?
So through the chair, those thoughts did cross my mind. I think in both cases work's already been done on them though.
Okay.
So if it were a new concept and we had to go out and start and there was research, then I would say yes. But I think in this case there's enough work that's been already done on these that it's more a case of putting together readily available information.
Okay.
And I think there was even an intent to have something potentially in the 2025 budget around feral cats as well. But again, that's something I've got to speak with the team and get up to speed on exactly where they're at. But for now, I'm okay taking it as information request.
Okay. I think Councillor Kelly wants to say something subject to that. Go ahead, Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. If it's the chair's position that what I'm saying isn't correct, it'd be nice to hear that while I'm speaking so that I can address it. Thank you.
I just didn't want to interrupt. So I will just finish my comment to say I completely agreed with that. I would just wanted to ensure, because I was going to probably say the exact same thing that Councillor Kelly had said about the licenses. So just wanted to make sure it was going through that. So, and we can't make no motions today, which is why it was just a question of future. I have Councillor Harris next.
Ms. Rayner, the city just completed a census, and I think our new population is 29,006 and change or thereabouts. How many dogs would you suggest live in the city of Fort Saskatchewan based on your estimate? Obviously, you said something close to 3,000 pet licenses, and then you're having to send notices and all this sort of stuff. But how many dogs would you suggest inhabit our fair burg of Fort Saskatchewan?
Through the chair to Councillor Harris, I would suggest that it's probably more than 2,800 dogs in our community. That's how many licenses that are for dogs specifically out of the licenses sold, and we had 590 cats licensed. I would definitely suggest that it is higher. I couldn't make a guess though at what that number would be.
This is a rhetorical question, so I don't expect an answer other than it appears to me from walking on the trails that everybody has 3.6 dogs per residence. So it's just a matter of interest.
All done. I will go to Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, just sort of curiosity, and I didn't see any provisions here. Doggy day homes, obviously they're housing more than 3 dogs a day. I don't know how many exist. Occasionally I see people that seem to be starting up doggy daycares kind of scenario. I know they exist under the discretionary use for business permits. But have we received many complaints? Obviously, during the day there could be maybe up to 10 or 12 dogs that are being housed temporarily. Obviously, they're not owned by that individual. But is there anything that you would deem necessary to potentially limit or limit the amount of issues that they could cause?
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Nguyen. I would assume if they're running a doggy daycare or any business that they'd have to have some sort of business license to be doing that. And I would assume that they'd have to have a permit then approved by the city to have more than the 3 animals there with them. It's one thing to have, I'm watching my family, my brother's sister's dog for a day or two. It's another thing if it's an ongoing continuous Monday to Friday type of thing, where you've got upwards of 3 dogs. So I would assume that would be covered within their business license, their permit to operate that business. Yeah.
So you haven't received any complaints?
We haven't received any complaints to us yet of someone running an operation like that.
That's disruptive or anything of that capacity. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Blizzard, back to you.
I'm getting to the end of them. One question. I liked your pictures of the dogs in the backs of the pickup trucks. In fact, the one looked like they're actually on top of I don't know what it is, the cover of the pickup truck, which would be very dangerous. Do you ever see injuries from dogs falling out? Just because I think that could be a very, powerful message when adding this in, because I think it's a good idea. I do see them in the backs of pickups regularly.
Madam Chair, through to Councillor Blizzard. Personally, our department hasn't, over the last couple of years, seen any injuries from that. But I think it obviously exists out there. And rather than being reactive to that, we're trying to be proactive and making sure that we have provisions in place so that it doesn't happen here within the fort.
Okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. I just think, some people may be going, well, my dog loves it. Yeah, but, here there are stats or something to kind of back that up. Because I know some dogs do love it. And the last one is the quiet hours. You kind of mentioned in there that we're aligning with the city's quiet hours for the dogs. But aren't the weekend quiet hours 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.?
Correct. The weekend hours would be from 10 p.m. till 9 a.m. the next day, and on stat holidays.
Right. I think I read in here, or maybe I read that wrong too, but I thought it looked like it was Monday to Friday, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., but it should be on weekends then to 9 a.m.
Currently not in the proposed bylaw, but something we could look at so it's a complete mirror.
So just to totally have the same thing, then quiet hours are quiet hours, whether you have a dog, whatever it is. Maybe not babies screaming hard to control them. Okay, and yeah, dogs at large. You know, I walk my dog all the time, and I come across the odd one. There's a cute little dog. They're pretty new in town, and the mom throws a ball as she's dog mom. As she's walking, the dog sticks to her, never wavers at all. I don't have an issue with that, but a lot of them do come over and sniff. But for the most part, I think people do put them on leashes. But I think overall, it's a good addition. When we do come across someone, they don't have their dog on a leash. Do you check first? Is this their first time? Is that when warnings are given? And if they say, no, I was warned before, or do you have a record of it, like with cars that you can look at?
Yes, we would typically, if we're responding to a call of that and we observe it ourselves, we'll always check, we'll get ID from that individual, radio back to our dispatch, and just run any previous files that may be associated with that person to see if previous dealings with them have come up. If we've issued warnings in the past, whether we've done education, and then that would dictate what we do in the moment with that individual.
Okay, so typically if you've given a person a warning, so my dog was out and you caught me again, and I'm like, wait a minute, I haven't been caught. You check, nope, it's second time around. Do you give another warning? Like how many warnings does a person get? Or it goes right to fine?
We typically do an educational approach first, and if that doesn't work and it's round 2 now, we will be moving to a violation ticket.
So second time would be a fine. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
We have another one from Mayor Ketcher.
I just have a procedural question for parliamentary, because Deputy Mayor Macon had said you can't do a notice of motion, but aren't you allowed to? I think I recall in my first year or something, no, actually it was later because Councillor Kelly was on, that there was a notice of motion put on because it was germane to the topic.
Through the chair to your worship, yes, we do accept notice of motion during committee of the whole meetings.
Okay, so
Through the chair, you can, like a motion that is acceptable during committee of the whole is also a referral motion. So another option is to refer the matter back to administration with some instructions attached to it.
Okay, and
you
I
just can't make a final decision.
Right.
But
I understand that, but because it was said that a person couldn't, but I'm just going to put it out there for council. If they do want to do a referral on the licenses to have something come back before, because this is scheduled to come back on July 2nd, I believe. So it would be really difficult to make a bunch of amendments at that point in time. So I'm just wanted the procedural part of it if anybody wants to. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the comment. I do think administration said that they were good with the request because they had the information and didn't need that notice of motion though. So I think that we're good, but I do appreciate the clarification on process. Everyone's good. That is it. That is all the questions for you guys today. Thank you for coming out today. Looking at council, would anyone like a comfort break? Okay, let's do 10 minutes, so 4:25. All right, we're going to start. Welcome back. Our next thing on our agenda is the 2024 Downtown Development Incentives Update. Welcome, Erin Brush-Duncan.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mayor, and members of Council. I'm Erin Brush-Duncan, Director of Economic Development. I appreciate you having me here today to give an update on the progress and impact of the downtown development incentives. Just a little bit of background. So on January 26, 2021, Council adopted the MDP, which specifically stated that supporting the existing businesses in the downtown and creating a vibrant downtown experience requires a greater population base in and around the downtown area. On July 6th of 2021, Council adopted the Downtown Action Plan, which included a recommendation to establish development incentives. And on December 14th, 2021, an information report was presented to Council regarding the implementation of incentives. Two separate incentive programs were presented, the Brownfield Tax Incentive and the Downtown Development Grant. Then on May 24th of 2022, Council approved the Brownfield Tax Exemption and Downtown Development Grant. Council also amended the Financial Reserves Policy to establish a funding source for the Downtown Development Grant Program and allocated $500,000 from the Financial Stabilization Reserve to the Economic Development Reserve. On June 20th of 2023, Council was provided with the first annual Council review of both programs, and we're here today for the 2024 update. As a quick reminder, the Brownfield Tax Exemption and the Downtown Development Grant encourage multi-unit residential development and redevelopment within the downtown. Both incentives, the projects must be located in downtown, be a minimum of 50% residential. We have to adhere to all applicable development regulations and guidelines, be at least 2 stories, and then we have some minimum unit requirements. Also, you are eligible for one of the programs. You cannot be eligible for and apply for both. The Brownfield Tax Exemption Program provides a 100% exemption of the municipal portion of property taxes on new multi-unit and mixed-use residential development for up to 5% of eligible capital costs for a period not to exceed 10 years. There are 10 designated sites in the downtown. The Downtown Development Grant provides a cash-based grant equivalent to 3% of the eligible capital costs to create that mixed-use or multi-unit residential development. The Brownfield Tax Exemption Program and the Downtown Development Grant Program have been available to potential investors since May of 2022 and are now due for their annual council review. Administration has worked directly with multiple property owners and potential investors. Several of the interested parties have noted that their interest in the downtown area is due to both the growing demand for housing in Fort Saskatchewan, as well as the area's proximity to the growth in large-scale projects in Alberta's industrial heartland and our other industrial areas. As of February 2024, Fort Saskatchewan's residential vacancy rate was 0.7%. The low vacancy rate, coupled with the upcoming major industrial projects, have created an attractive climate for multi-unit residential development. Since the program's inception in 2022, a total of 15 inquiries have been received. Of the inquiries received to date, 2 applications have been approved, 2 are preparing permit applications, and we expect to be applying, and 1 is proceeding with their initial investigations and has expressed interest in developing specifically within downtown Fort Saskatchewan. In the 2023 review, Economic Development received 8 inquiries, and over the past year, 2 of those inquiries have advanced to approved applications. The 2 approved brownfield projects will add 98 residential units within the downtown. Both properties are located on the Fort Station site. Construction is underway with the anticipated completion date of 2025. The recipient shared that the Brownfield Incentive Program was instrumental in making the business case to build the multi-family residential projects in downtown Fort Saskatchewan, and that without the program, it would have been unlikely that either project would have proceeded due to the increased costs and the higher interest rate environment. In the past year, Economic Development has received 7 new inquiries. Of those, 2 are currently working through the design and permitting processes, and we do expect them to apply for the Downtown Development Grant program. The project furthest along in this process is expected to add 90 residential units and 10,000 square feet of commercial space within the downtown in their phase 1. The property is located on the old health center site. Future phases will add over 300 additional residential units for a total of over 400 units. Since the MDP's adoption, 191 additional dwelling units within the downtown have either been built or are under construction, increasing the number of dwelling units in the downtown by approximately 11.5%. When the old health center site is fully built, a total of almost 600 additional dwelling units will have been added to the downtown since the MDP's adoption, increasing the number of dwelling units in the downtown by more than 35%. Some program observations. Both programs are still in the early adoption phases, and feedback has been favorable, with interest being received by a variety of projects. Administration continues to promote the programs and solicit feedback from potential investors and property owners. As part of the downtown development strategy and to follow best practices, administration will also review and continue to refine the programs to best meet the needs of Fort Saskatchewan. The incentive fund of $500,000 was established in 2022 to support the downtown development grants. Successful grant applications draw from this fund, and the tax uplift from the project is used to replenish the fund back to the optimal balance. At this time, no funds have been withdrawn from the fund. However, we have noted that a large-scale successful downtown development grant application with eligible capital costs of $17 million would receive the entirety of that $500,000 grant. And assuming that a $17 million assessment value and the current residential tax rate, the fund would not be fully replenished for about 5 years. Private investment interest in Fort Saskatchewan's real estate market is strong because of the low vacancy rate and upcoming major industrial projects. Should the grant program be unavailable or partially unavailable for 5 years, there could be a missed opportunity for the downtown. Temporarily increasing the available funds while adding an additional cap of $500,000 per project would increase the city's ability to support multiple projects during this period of increased investment interest. Interest in the programs has been primarily in our larger sites, and it has been noted that the current requirements of 3 mixed-use units or 6 residential units may be a barrier for some smaller sites. So for our next steps, administration is proposing some updates and next steps for the downtown development incentives programs. One of those is to temporarily increase the fund for the downtown development grant to ensure that the programs remain available during periods of increased interest. Administration recommends temporarily increasing the available funds from $500,000 to $1 million, while also introducing an additional cap of $500,000 per project. This would require amending the financial reserves policy. The increased optimal balance should be reviewed after 5 years when market conditions may have changed. The second second proposal that we'll be bringing forward is to reduce the number of required residential units. Reducing the required number of residential units per project to 2 mixed use or 4 residential units would better reflect the development limitations of smaller, underutilized, or vacant lots within the downtown. The reduction would require an amendment to bylaw C-1522, the brownfield tax exemption, as well as the downtown development grant policy FIN-015-C. These potential changes will be presented for council consideration at a future regular council meeting, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I will go first, I guess. So the reduction of the number of residential units that you're recommending, would it be just particular to the smaller parcels? Like I wouldn't see the need to reduce that requirement for large sites.
Madam Chairperson, that is something that we could consider, is saying, for a site below a certain size, this would be the requirement, and sites above this size would be this requirement. That is something that we could consider.
Okay, it would be, I guess I would put that to you to bring back if you think that there are any barriers to that approach too. And then on the temporary increase of funds, I think I would support that. I wouldn't mind that one coming back for debate. I don't have any, at this time, I don't have any reason to be against that. So we'll see what other people have to say. We have some people queued up now. Councillor Kelly, you are first.
Thank you. I assume that the recommendations you spoke to here will come back to council as part of the budget process?
Through Madam Chairperson to Councillor Kelly, yes, they would be brought back at a regular council meeting.
Part of the budget process or at a council meeting before the budget? Just curious.
My intent would be at a regular council meeting this fall.
Before the budget. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Mayor Ketcher.
So I guess the question that I have is for the smaller lots that are in the downtown area. Is the barrier just that they can't meet that, or is there a barrier through the land use bylaw as well that would have to be amended if we wanted to require them to have more and have them go up?
Through Madam Chairperson to Mayor Ketcher, it's a little bit of both. So my understanding in having some of our conversations is that by having more units, there are more requirements for parking and things along those lines. And sometimes with the much smaller lots, it's difficult to fit. It's easier to fit a 4-plex than, let's say, a 6-plex or things like that. And so with the smaller lots, this could possibly open up more of the lots for something that's like a 4-plex.
So I guess the other question that I have, because we have a few vacant lots that are in the commercial district that I would anticipate wouldn't be permitted to be like a duplex or a 4-plex stuck in there. So where are you talking that you would put these duplexes or 4-plexes that could potentially be eligible?
Through Madam Chairperson to Mayor Ketcher, if it is, depending on the land use bylaw, if the area requires, for instance, commercial on the ground floor or things like that, we would still require everything to follow the land use bylaw. But if there is a smaller vacant lot in an area that is identified as a potential for residential only and not with that requirement of commercial, that would be a lot that would be available. And I think the minimum would still be a 4-plex for like a only residential project. And then if it is a mixed use project, so commercial on bottom and then commercial on bottom and residential on top, then there's potential reduction to 2 units of that mixed.
If you allow me just to
continue. Yep.
So I guess the question that I really have on that is are we trying to get into just funding people to build duplexes and 4-plexes downtown, or is the goal to actually get those empty lots utilized and that should be given first priority?
Through Madam Chairperson to Mayor Ketcher, the goal of the downtown development strategy is to promote investment on some of our vacant and underutilized lots. So anything that was done to suggest any of those changes for those incentives would be with that goal to try and address those first. And so I do not believe that the changes that we're proposing for the incentives would incentivize duplexes. The smallest amount would be a 4-plex, or if it's got the commercial on the bottom and just 2 residential units on top. We do have a lot of 2-story buildings in our downtown.
Okay, so when you come back to council, if you can provide a map of where the 4-plexes would potentially be and where you could have those mixed use, I think that would be good for your presentation.
Thank you.
Councillor Blizzard, you're next.
Yeah, I think I'm going down the same road here. I'm just kind of wondering, when you said 4-plexes, like where do they belong as a downtown development? When I see development, I'm thinking more, yes, we're looking at new units, but it's also commercial. So I can't picture a 4-plex in some of these areas that are mainly commercial, right? So like Mayor Ketcher said, a map or something showing where this is allowed and where that's allowed would be helpful.
Through Madam Chairperson to Councillor Blizzard, that's something I can definitely take under advisement for our presentation. We have seen a new fourplex development in the downtown, kind of between 99th and 98th. But absolutely, I will look at mapping as well as showcasing where in the land use bylaw those would be appropriate.
Okay. One of the things that said in here was 50% residential. So if you have someone building on one of the vacant lots downtown where there's lots of businesses, so you're looking at then having the main floor commercial, the upstairs could be, instead of saying they have to have 3 or 4 units, they could have 2. Is that what you're looking at changing?
Through Madam Chairperson and Councillor Blizzard, yes. So the requirement to still have, 50% residential to be eligible for this program, yes, you would still have to have that 50% eligibility or 50% residential to be eligible. And so your residential space would have to be at least equal to the commercial space below.
Okay, thanks.
3, 2, 1. That is all for you today. Thank you very much. So next steps, I guess we'll see you in the fall to incorporate some of our feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any councillor inquiries of administration? Not seeing any. I'll take, Oh, I apologize. Sorry. I didn't see. Councillor Nguyen.
Yeah, thanks. Just a question on neighborhood rehab on Low Avenue. I've just heard some murmurs around the neighborhood, wondering if construction start date was delayed at all this year. Seems to be some opinions that it'd be nice to see them getting going a little bit earlier. I know there's another phase of it planned for next summer as well. It does seem to me that third week in June is a little bit late to be beginning a project of this size, and kind of mixes up everyone's summer if it goes late into the fall like it looks like it's going to at this point.
Through the chair, I'll ask for an updated timeline and advise council. Okay, and if the start date is there for a reason this late in the season already. Yeah, I'm not aware of any delays, but I will get an update. Sure, that'd be great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to go in camera? Mayor Ketchum?
I'll make the motion to go in camera as per the items listed under FOIP. Thank you.
Thank you. Close the motion. Are you waiting for anybody? Oh, thank you very much. All right.